in the Pledge of Allegiance and present colors, but we are waiting on their arrival. So Alderman Yonda, stay on standby, please. I know you've got bumped twice, and hopefully we'll get to you eventually before the calendar year runs out. Item 4 is setting the agenda. We'll do so during the traditional meeting. Item 5 is approval of the minutes from the meeting held November 25th. Are there any additions or modifications that anyone noticed? There'll be an opportunity to make those corrections during the regular meeting as well. Item 6, citizens to be heard. Item 7, special recognition, Donation Muscular Dystrophy Association. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor. As the board will recall, in May of this year, the mayor signed a proclamation identifying MDA Field the Boot Month in the city of Germantown, and since that period of time, the Germantown firefighters have been very active in this endeavor in raising funds, and they've raised just over $11,000 in funds, and they will present that to the MDA representatives this evening.
Great, thank you. Any questions for staff on this particular item? Item 7B, Germantown Education Commission Teacher of the Month. That will be Laura Beth Knight. Vice Mayor Gibson, is that your commission?
It is.
It's okay. And you will recognize any members of your commission and obviously the teacher as well.
I will.
Thank you. Any questions on that particular item? That takes us to, obviously we'll have Alderman liaison reports this evening. Takes us to the preliminary agenda. First item, amendment, enterprise software upgrade for public safety computer aided dispatch. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Actually, I'm going to discuss item 9A and 9B together. If you have any questions during the preliminary session, myself, the Police Department, and Mr. Fisher can address those. But the first two preliminary agenda items request authorization to upgrade the city software and hardware for our public safety computer-aided dispatch system, otherwise known as the CAD. The first agenda item requests the authorization of an amendment with Tyler Technologies for an upgrade from the Aegis MSP software to enterprise CAD software in an amount not to exceed $123,690. The infrastructure replacement budget for this year includes $130,000 as approved by this body in the budget in FY20 to cover this expenditure. The second agenda item requests authorization to purchase the hardware and operating system licensing for the CAD system upgrade from CDW Government in the amount of $127,377.66. The city is using a cooperative purchase agreement for this item to purchase pricing from CDW Government. The infrastructure replacement budget approved by the board for an FY20 includes $145,000 to cover this expenditure. A listing of the enhancements to the CAD system, including next generation text to 911 capabilities, is listed in the discussion portion of your first agenda sheet regarding the enterprise software item. And both of these items, as I described in terms of what was budgeted in the IRP, are under budget.
That was 9A and B, correct?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for staff on either item? Any questions for staff on either item, 9A or 9B? Takes us to 9C on the agenda, budget adjustment, Germantown Athletic Club, Phase 4 renovations. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor. Phase 4, the Germantown Athletic Club renovation is nearing completion. If you're a member of the club, you've seen amazing things happen, particularly with this last go-around at Phase 4. Included in the FY20 infrastructure replacement budget within the Germantown Athletic Club, this body included $75,000 to address the aging skylights. Those skylights were installed when the building opened in 1990. After further review of this item by the athletic club staff, and after the adoption of the budget for FY20, the infrastructure replacement skylight project has been pushed back in the renovation schedule and will be resubmitted for consideration in future budgets, primarily because of the cost we encountered with actually making those changes. However, a portion of the $75,000 has already been used in FY20 by the athletic club staff for skylight redesign work. The budget adjustment before you, and that's what you're asked to approve this evening, reallocates the balance of the $75,000, which is $68,100 from the Skylight project to the Phase 4 renovation budget line item to be used for interior improvements to the athletic club's elevator and to cover potential costs of small change orders and add-ons not included in the original Phase 4 contract as this project comes to a completion. Any additional funds that are not used in the items I mentioned for the elevator and closeout for Phase 4 will be added to the fund balance in this enterprise fund. Staff recommends approval of this budget adjustment, and just to remind the board, all of the funding for whether it's the infrastructure replacement program items or the actual capital construction of Phase 4 and the other phases have all come from excess revenue over expenditures generated within the athletic club enterprise fund.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on the athletic club item? Any questions for staff on this particular item? Takes us to 9D on the agenda this evening, competitive seal proposal, authorization, community and employee survey provider. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. The citizen survey is one of the most important tools that the city uses to obtain customer feedback and requirements. The information we receive assists our organization and how we plan, prioritize, and allocate services and resources and how we deliver services. The employee survey helps in identifying internal opportunities for improvement in areas such as employee satisfaction and employee engagement. The procurement department is requesting that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve the utilization of the competitive seal proposal process to procure a citizen and employee survey provider. The authorization of this process is required by state law and by our own city ordinance. Staff recommends approval to make use of the process to procure a survey provider.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this particular item? Any questions for staff on the citizen survey? Thank you. That takes us to item 9E, PEG reimbursement or PEG disbursement to GMSD first quarter. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. As you know, the city receives PEG funding, which stands for Public Educational and Governmental Funding, on a quarterly basis from Comcast and AT&T based upon the number of their subscribers. The PEG funding that we receive is based upon a fee that was established a number of years ago, and if you have Comcast or AT&T as a subscriber, you are paying the cost to help support public educational and governmental funding, often known as the public access channel. These funds are designated for the Germantown Municipal School District for use in meeting the capital equipment needs of the Germantown Municipal Television Station, which is based out of Houston High School and is also the provider of our board meetings and planning commission meetings and other commission meetings that we have here in the council chambers. The total amount of the PEG funding received for the first quarter from these two providers, Comcast and AT&T, is $40,827.05. This agenda item authorizes the reimbursement to GMSD to support their instructional television program.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this particular item? Alderman Owens.
Yeah, Patrick, I apologize. I meant to get with you about this. What is the budget? Do we know what the budget is for the TV station, Germantown Municipal School District?
I don't know what GMSD's total budget is. We can provide that for the board, but this money is a pass-through, Alderman Owens, from the two providers to the city, and we then forward that on to GMSD for use to provide GMTV. But if the board so desires, if you're requesting, I'll provide you a budget for what their programming looks like.
Sure. I mean,
not their programming, but their budget.
I just think, if this is, I can't remember, is around this amount, $40,000, it seems that we've given them in the past, and if that's a quarterly thing, it just seems like that's a pretty good amount of revenue. I just didn't know if that was a surplus for them or where the surplus went. What does that go to?
We'll provide it. They have a budget, and it goes for capital equipment. It must be used for capital.
Some of those improvements have been for this council chamber, for sound system, video cameras,
Right,
and I believe the monitors as well were provided because there's a need for them to be able to produce a quality product, so it somewhat benefits us as well.
Excellent.
But we can provide that for you and to the board. Any further questions on that particular item? That concludes the preliminary agenda. We move to the regular agenda this evening. Item 10 will be a public hearing for Resolution 19R10, Care for at the Gateway, Plan Development and Revised Outline Plan. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. The applicant, Cannon Austin Cannon, Inc., is before the Board this evening seeking an amendment to their outline plan approved by this body on November 26, 2018, known as Care for at the Gateway. Under the discussion section of your agenda sheet, towards the bottom is a comparison of the revised outline plan with the previous plan approval. Please note that the total site area has not changed in terms of the 3 phases, and the total area to be developed, as I just mentioned, will take place over 3 phases over several years. As the Mayor mentioned, this is a public hearing that was properly posted and noted for the citizens to attend this meeting and comment on this. Mr. Ross will make this presentation. We also have representatives from Cannon Austin Cannon, who I believe will also make a presentation to this body.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this particular item at this time? Any questions for staff on item 10? Thank you. We move to item 11 on the agenda, approval of Americans with Disability Act, ADA Transition Plan. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. In January 2017, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen passed a resolution calling for the establishment of an ADA transition plan. That resolution is included, I believe, as attachment 1 in your agenda material. Phase 1 of the Americans with Disability Act transition plan is complete and is the subject of your action this evening. 80% of the funding to complete this study and the development of the transition plan was provided by the Tennessee Department of Transportation and was included in the FY19 budget. The transition plan identifies public accessibility and physical boundaries for people with disabilities that the city needs to correct over a period of time. It is estimated the cost to cover the correct these deficiencies is over $11 million, and we're looking at least a 25-year implementation plan. As we're developing the budget for FY21, we will incorporate a number of these items for consideration by this body as you look at the capital improvements plan. Ms. Lisa Piefer, our ADA coordinator, Mr. Tim Gwaltney, our city engineer, will make this presentation. Phase 2 will be developed next and will be a component of the transition plan. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen authorized funding for that at a board meeting, I believe, two meetings ago for the development of that next phase of the plan. That, too, was also funded by TDOT at 80%.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Questions for staff on this particular plan? Vice Mayor Gibson.
Just a couple of questions. I did appreciate, met with Mr. Gwaltney to discuss the plan, and we discussed that historical, how long that this has been going on. And Ms. Piefer, I know that that's part of what you're going to speak to, but can you just very briefly give us a synopsis of what that, I know from 1990 to date is not brief, but substantial.
Yes, ma'am. We started this in, of course, 1986 when the board actually did the ADA Access Access Review Board, and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 caused that one, and so forth. And in 1992, we generated a transition plan at that point from the 1990. Over the past 40-plus years, the city has addressed transition plans throughout the process as the laws have changed. This is a never-ending, to be honest with you, a never-ending process. This is a living, breathing document that will change as laws change, as facilities change, as needs change.
And the inventory is ongoing, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff on this particular item? Is there a desire to move this to the preliminary agenda? I see that there's some head nods.
Yes. I think we've all had conversations about this, and I've read our report. I think we can put it in
I believe there were one-on-ones with the engineer as well. We will make that adjustment. Item 11 on the agenda this evening will become item F on the preliminary agenda, and we'll make note of that during the time of the meeting to establish and set the agenda as well.
I'll
That-
just note,
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Mayor, that I would oppose that since this isn't really a routine item in our resolution. 19R05, when we created the preliminary agenda, we told the public we'd use this for routine items.
I completely understand. If it's not majority consent, we'll be glad to present it. No problem whatsoever. Scratch that, moving to F, and we'll present item 11 to the community. That reaches the conclusion of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting. We'll make the announcement that we will conclude the meeting after item 11, and we will then convene as the Germantown Beer Board to hear two revocation suspension cases this evening. The first is item 12, suspension revocation of beer license Circle K located at 9113 Winchester Road. Mr. Lawton?
Mayor, I'll be brief. This regards, the charge is the sale of beer to a minor at the Circle K store located, as you mentioned, 1913 Winchester Road. The discussion portion of your agenda sheet gives the history of a prior incident involving a 19-year-old cooperating individual. Mr. Taylor Cates, our senior prosecuting attorney, is here, and he will put on the evidence and make this presentation to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. I assume that would be your presentation for item 13 as well, Beer Board hearing for suspension revocation of beer license for the Shell Food Mart located at 9095 Poplar Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions on either item for staff at this time? We are adjourned.
I see some scouts out there.
Is anyone here for either Circle K or Shell?
The, Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting, regularly scheduled for tonight, Monday, December the 9th. We're glad to have a good-sized audience here tonight. We welcome all those in attendance. We welcome those that are watching at home or streaming as well. All aldermen are present and accounted for this evening. This evening, our invocation will be led by Public Works Director Bo Mills. Our Pledge of Allegiance and the presentation of the colors will be led by Troop 271 from St. George's Independent School with leaders Tony Nygren and Aaron Monette. Please rise for the invocation.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for this good day you've provided. We thank you, Lord, for your many blessings that you bestow upon us in this great city that we live in. We thank you for joy and peace and hope and love that you brought into the world during this time of year that we celebrate. We just ask for your wisdom for this board as they care for the future of our city as they go forward, and just give them your wisdom as they do so. I pray these things in your precious name. Amen.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you, Director Mills. Thank you, Scouts 271. We appreciate any time the Scouts can be part of our meeting and present the colors. That takes us to item 3 on the agenda this evening, setting of the agenda. The agenda was presented to the public and delivered in many different means. This evening during executive session, the board met at 5:30, thoroughly reviewed the agenda. At that time, there were no modifications. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as published?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion, there's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
The agenda has been adopted. Brings us to item 5 on the agenda this evening, approval of the minutes from the regular scheduled meeting of November 25th, 2019. Again, in executive session, the board reviewed the minutes. At that time, there were no corrections or modifications. Are there any at this time? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Sanders.
Yes.
The minutes have been approved. That brings us to item 6 on the agenda this evening, citizens to be heard. Citizens have an opportunity to speak to the board for 3 minutes. We have one sheet. Is there anyone else that would like to submit a sheet to our clerk this evening? If you would come forward and do so. While you're coming forward to present that, I will read the guidelines for citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard is designed to gain the input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. The presiding board chair shall have the sole authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who is disruptive or does not adhere to board rules. With that being stated, we have 2 people that have filled out Citizens Be Heard forms. First one would be Pauline Latham. If you could come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. you can adjust your mic as well. Thank you. Go ahead.
On August 12th, I reported the results of a next-door apartment poll on my blog. I chose a poll over a petition because I wanted all pro and con voices heard, and because a poll can be analyzed statistically. Nextdoor was chosen to be the platform because over 50% of the households in the city are subscribers, and all users are verified residents. The same poll was posted in broad southern, northwestern, and northeastern parts of the city. Collierville and Memphis neighborhoods were excluded. Each account has one vote by secret ballot. The December 8 updated results were still overwhelmingly against adding apartment units to the city, and the statistical significance is now literally off the charts. 827 people have now voted versus 502 in August. Each of the three geographic areas had almost exactly the same result, demonstrating widespread agreement and internal consistency. These definitive results have not changed. 71% want no new apartments. 22% say keep the ratio of apartment units to homes at the current 6 to 7%, and 7% want a full build-out. In the discussions, a few stated that retirement places were fine, but not other multifamily, and some expressed the view that condos were preferable to rentals. No one stated that multifamily was fine as long as it was part of a multi-use development. For the 22% of citizens who want the ratio of apartments to homes to remain the same, 320 new units at Care 4 is excessive, as it would require 4,500 new single-family homes to keep the ratio constant. If you vote for this project tonight, know full well that you are representing 7% of your constituents. To those who say it is the same people speaking before this body every time, I say this: I am speaking for 827 people. Please respect the citizens you represent. This poll was a huge collective effort of 3 individuals who simply want the citizens' voices to count. We welcomed all viewpoints and had no idea what the result would be when we undertook this project. For more information, you can see my blog about the methodology and statistics. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Latham, for coming forward and speaking to the board this evening. The next speaker will be Sandy Davis. Ms. Davis, you can come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Sandy Davis, 2857 Old Elm Lane, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. First, I want to address this so-called prestigious award. It's not prestigious because we, the taxpayers, bought it. I believe Alderman Whistleblower is correct. It has been a driving force behind all this dense development that the residents clearly do not want. And of course, our employees worked hard to get this award because you tied their raises, promotions, and paid time off to it. Just another hidden cost to this atrocity that you all call an award. And not one official has told the public exactly what we get from this award that we purchased. But then you can't tell the public that we'll attract more developers because you all know that's one of those words you can't use anymore, like apartments. Because that clues people into what you all are up to. And let's talk about these apartments. If you all weren't painfully aware of that the residents don't want them, you wouldn't be spending so much time and effort to trick the public into thinking you are against apartments. And here we are in December 2019 with Thornwood Apartments, as of 2 weeks ago, still 33% vacant, and the Bridges in Germantown advertising a $499 move-in special. Where is the demand for the apartments that you all said there was? There is not enough demand to support the apartments we already have, but here you all are, once again, voting for apartments with your usual 3-2 split. The elephant in the room is what is in it for you. And grow or die my foot. Germantown has always had stringent building restrictions until you all changed them, and yet it was always the most sought-after area to live in Shelby County with the highest property values. Your quote, crown jewel will be tomorrow's blight. And stop telling yourself that some residents might be unhappy with the overdevelopment. You all know it's almost every single homeowning resident that doesn't want dense development, or you wouldn't spend so much time and effort changing the word from apartments to mixed-use development. We are bleeding money because of fraud, waste, and abuse. A parliamentarian to shut us up, an award that has probably cost us millions of dollars, as well as the charm of our city, a PR firm to make it appear as you all are listening to the residents, which we all know is not the case. But let's, for the sake of argument, say that the residents are simply too stupid to know what's in their own best interest. It is not your place to substitute your judgments and decisions for ours. We don't even trust your motives. We don't trust your decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Davis, for sharing your remarks with the board. That concludes citizens to be heard for this evening. We move to item 7 on the agenda this evening. Special recognition. First is a donation from the to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I believe Mr. Lawton and Chief Selberg will be making this presentation.
Chief Selberg will, Mayor. Yes,
Chief,
thank
please
you.
come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Aldermen. As you may recall, back on May 13th, Mayor Palazzolo made a proclamation supporting the Fill the Boot campaign to raise funds for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. The Fill the Boot campaign is a special project that fire departments across the country have supported for many years. Since that proclamation, our firefighters have been very busy. Our campaign is coordinated by our Germantown Firefighters Association, Local 3858. Especially fire driver Mike Hobson and firefighter Scott Cooper, who's also the president of the Firefighters Association. This is a voluntary program that is well supported by all the firefighters, the fire department, and the city. Something that made it special for us is that the local MDA ambassador, Hannah Warren, is from Germantown. She and her mother actively helped with our efforts. In fact, she was everywhere, encouraging the firefighters. The fundraising was done in front of Kroger's and Sprouts, as well as the Germantown 4th of July celebration and the Germantown Festival. Overall, they were able to raise $11,500 for MDA. Firefighter Scott Cooper and driver Mike Hobson, along with other firefighters, and I will mention we planned on having more here, but they're out on all calls tonight. They're here to present the check tonight to Hannah Warren and Laura Luttrick, the Executive Director for Western Tennessee MDA, to support their efforts to fight muscular dystrophy.
Thank you guys very much. I'm Scott Cooper. Nice to meet you guys. Just wanted to start off with thanking you, Mr. Mayor, for the proclamation. That was awesome. Thank you. First time that's ever happened, so that was a big step for us. Mr. Walton for taking the time to meet with us, and we can't do this without our chiefs. So Chief Beeman's operations chief. He helped kind of coordinate things with the battalion chief so we could do this on duty also. Mike Hobson came in a lot on his time off to collect. We had some of you guys there collecting too, so it was an honor to do this. Sometimes we get out of the habit. We skipped it for about 3 years. And we met Hannah and met Miss Laura, and having her hometown hero here made it worth it for us. So we look forward to doing this next year. Thank you guys all for your support.
Thank you to Germantown Fire Department for your leadership. Thank you as well, MD, for partnering with us. We are very, very appreciative, and as long as you like, we will continue this partnership. So I think you have your answer. We don't need to take any more 3-year breaks, so go ahead. Did you want to make any comments as well? Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you, Mayor, Aldermen, the citizens of Germantown, and of course the Germantown Fire Department for your contributions and your support. Those funds will help ensure our families that we serve that our clinics will stay open at Wesley Neurology here in Germantown and also at Le Bonheur Children's Hospital. So we thank you so much, and we're so grateful for that support. Those funds also help send every child age 8 to 17 to a week-long free summer camp, as well as fund research. And we currently have over 100 clinical trials going on across the United States. So we're so appreciative, and thank you all for your support. And I want to introduce, for those that don't know, Hannah. Hannah Warren is our local ambassador, and she truly makes such a difference whenever she goes and speaks to the fire departments and the city council. And we're just so thankful that we have her. So please welcome Hannah.
Hannah, you may need to adjust your microphone down just a bit. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Hannah Warren. I am 20 years old, and I have a form of muscular dystrophy called myotonic dystrophy type 1. I would like to thank Germantown's Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the City Administrator for your support of MDA. Thank you to the Germantown Fire Department and Germantown Firefighters Association for beginning to fill the boot again this year for MDA. Thank you especially to Chief Selberg, Scott Cooper, and Mike Hobson for your leadership in coordinating this effort. It has brought me great joy this year to meet the Germantown firefighters and not only become friends, but family as well. I have no doubt that if I had a need, I could call any one of these firefighters and know that they would help to do whatever they could to help me. This past month has been challenging for me health-wise, but many of my new friends and now family have checked on me or sent me messages through social media. Thank you all not only for raising money for MDA, but for caring about me as well. I also want to thank the citizens and visitors of Germantown for donating to this amazing amount of money to fill the boot. This money will stay local and benefit the almost 2,000 MDA families in the Memphis and Mid-South area that our local MDA serves. As a local ambassador, I am speaking for MDA and thanking you for helping our local MDA families by your generous giving. Again, as a very proud Germantown resident, thank you to my firefighters for your sacrificial efforts to fill the boot. I love you all.
And I think some just came in from a call, so. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Hannah, for your leadership efforts. We saw you out there as well every step of the way. I know I ran into you at the festival, and so we are committed to helping in years to come as well. So thank you again. That brings us to item 7B on the agenda this evening. Germantown Education Commission Teacher of the Month, Vice Mayor Gibson. I believe that is your liaisonship.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask members of the Education Commission, Mr. Steve Chandler, Brenda Dew, Manjeet Kaur, and Patricia Toromina. And do I see Barb Boyer coming forward as well? And then if I could ask Miss Laura Beth Knight to come forward. Laura Beth Knight is the kind of teacher who gets kids excited to go to school. Following in her mom's footsteps, and I see Lana and her dad, Barry, here tonight as well, Ms. Knight joined the staff at Riverdale School a few years ago. Since then, she has gained a reputation as a teacher who shows sincere care and concern for her students and does not shy away from the challenge of going above and beyond what is expected. As a student who struggled with sitting still herself, she works hard to find solutions to meet the needs for all students. And I can speak from experience. I've known Laura Beth since she was about 4 in preschool with my own daughter. And to see where you have come and gone to, we are so proud of you. As a student, again, you struggled with finding ways to sit still, but you work hard to find those solutions often using data-driven research to develop plans to help students succeed. She builds relationships with students by learning about their strengths and interests and encouraging their endeavors. Outside the classroom, Ms. Knight is committed to continuing her own learning and encouraging others to do the same. She has a long list of training classes under her belt and has served as a University of Memphis teacher candidate, observation teacher, second grade chair, and a Read to Ready state initiative teacher. She is often seen working with students through extracurricular activities, including the Riverdale Science Club, Raider Reader Program, and Raider Theater. In the community, Ms. Knight is an active member of her church and serves as a mentor and tutor for Streets Ministries and Best Buddies Memphis. Ms. Knight, please accept our appreciation for your commitment to Germantown students and to excellence every day. Congratulations on being the Teacher of the Month for December 2019.
Congratulations, Mrs. Knight. We appreciate your service and your ability to work with our students at Riverdale. We also thank those members of the Education Commission that work tirelessly to identify great leadership like yourself out in the community. So thank you for both your efforts. Yep. That concludes special recognition for this evening and takes us to item 8 on the agenda, Alderman Liaison Reports. Aldermen report on their boards and commissions that they serve. We start with position 1 through 5. Alderman Sanders.
Thank you. The Beautification Commission would like to thank everyone from the community for their support and participation at the lighting of our Christmas tree in Municipal Park the Friday after Thanksgiving. It was a big success, and I'm told it was a record crowd. The commission will meet tomorrow evening to judge this year's holiday lighting contest. Nominations will be accepted through midnight tonight. Residents can go to the Germantown Parks and Recreation's Facebook page for information about submitting your nominations. That completes my report.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. The Board of Zoning Appeals will be meeting in these chambers tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. The Library Board welcomes anyone that would like to be a member of the Friends of the Library. For $10 a month, you're able to join the Friends of the Library, receive a birthday book for your birthday month. We also encourage everyone to sign up to receive a library card. And if you know any new babies that are being born, please participate in the Books from Birth program. The Parks and Rec Commission would like to remind everyone that we have a holiday parade this Saturday, the 14th at 2 p.m. The United States Marine Corps Reserves will have their Toys for Tots program. They welcome new unwrapped toys. You can bring those along the parade route, and uniformed Marines will be receiving those, or certainly our Board of Mayor and Aldermen would be happy to take those and get them where they need to go as well. And if I could say, we have our Santa, our Rodney Strop, who's been a faithful member of the Parks and Recreation Commission for many years. This will be his last year as Santa, so please come out and wish him well. He is certainly someone who has that Christmas spirit all year long, and we are so thankful for him. And that's my report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Owens.
Thanks, Mayor. The Planning Commission met on December the 3rd and reviewed and approved a revised site plan for Houston High School, which included a parking expansion for the students. And that is my report.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Yonda.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report.
Thank you. And just briefly from the mayor's office, I will state, unless it went out on a call, that we have our new fire truck out in front of City Hall, Truck 93, I believe, and that's on full display. Alderman Yonda, I'm told that they'll let you ring the siren if you wish later on, or anyone in the audience who would wish to do that as well. And on a very serious note, I'd like to just pass on my personal thanks and recognition. He's already received a letter of commendation. Battalion Chief Buddy Wheeler, while off duty in rural Mississippi, was able to help an injured man and bring the Benton County Rescue Squad to his safety. And even while off duty, our guys are serving and protecting throughout the region. So I know he's been recognized, but if you would share the board's recognition as well, both chiefs, if you will, to Buddy. That concludes Alderman liaison reports for this evening. We move to the preliminary agenda. The preliminary agenda was presented to the public, was set and adopted in the agenda this evening, and was thoroughly vetted and reviewed during our executive session at 5:30. Those items include item 9A, amendment enterprise software upgrade for public safety computer-aided dispatch. Item 9B, purchase enterprise hardware upgrade for public safety computer-aided dispatch. Those are both similar but different items. Item 9C, budget adjustment, Germantown Athletic Club Phase 4 renovations. Item D, competitive seal proposed authorization, community and employee survey provider. Item 9E, public education governmental disbursement to GMSD for the first quarter. Those are the items that are concluded or included on the preliminary agenda. Is there a motion to approve the preliminary agenda as presented to the public?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Sanders?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Preliminary agenda moved, or does not move forward. It is approved. That takes us to the regular agenda. This evening, item 10 is a public hearing on Resolution 19R10, Care for at the Gateway, Plan Development, Revised Outline Plan. Director Ross will make the presentation this evening, and we'll have a public hearing as well. Director Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This item is to approve a revised outline plan for Care for at the Gateway Plan Development, as recommended by the Planning Commission at their November 5th meeting. This property was rezoned from the Shopping Center and Commercial General District C2 to the T5 Urban Center and T6 Urban Core Districts as part of the Germantown West Gateway rezoning that was done in November of 2014. The Planning Commission reviewed and recommended the approval of the original outline plan on October 2nd, 2018, and this Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved it on November 26, 2018. As previously stated, the revised outline plan was reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission as reflected in Attachment 5, the minutes from that meeting on November 5th, 2019. To summarize their request, the applicant now seeks to amend the previously approved outline plan by revising the uses of this plan development to allow the addition of multifamily that will consist of 320 units as a permitted use within the boundaries of this project. The previously approved outline plan considered only office, retail, and other commercial uses. Per 23-763 of the municipal code, the T5 and T6 districts allow for a mix of uses that includes residential, retail, commercial, office. This is the summary table of the area. They are just under 9 acres with the addition of 320 units. They are lowering their office space requirements by about 110,000 square feet, modifying their retail square footage slightly, lowering the hotel room count by about 65 rooms, and their parking spaces have been adjusted slightly to reflect some changes within the building plans. As part of this is the outline plan for Care For. It shows the project area, breaking it down to 2 parcels, and then the phase plan. Phase 1 will start at the corner of Poplar Avenue and Kirby Avenue. Phase 2 will be directly behind the existing inline building, which will remain as part of this project and get a refresh at some point during the phase development. And then phase 3 will be on the south side of the project, abutting the Norfolk Southern Railroad line along Kirby Avenue. This is a concept plan where you can see the parking structure within phase 1 and phase 3. Phase 2 would share those parking structures and have limited surface parking. There'd also be surface parking along the roadways within this project and an additional lane is added as part of this project to have a dedicated right turn lane onto Kirby Avenue, Kirby Parkway. There's a proposed traffic signal that the transportation consultants will get more into at mid-block on Kirby, and another traffic signal at the western end of the project on Poplar Avenue. Just for perspective, this distance is about the same distance as Trevere Drive from Kirby on the east side of Kirby Parkway. The applicant is prepared to make a presentation as well for the board, just to cover some of the finer details of the project. But before I cue that up for them, as this relates to Germantown Forward 20, this does hit a significant number of community values around strength, health, and sustainability of our community. It specifically hits the key performance area of economic development and the strategic objective of those policies encouraging investments in our key commercial areas, of which there are only 5 key commercials in the city, by facilitating opportunities for these vital areas to be sustainable and flourish moving forward. If you'll give me a second to make the transition, I will pull up the applicant's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. If the applicant would like to come to the podium in preparation of having, I guess, the change of information. If you would introduce yourself to the board and state your name and address for the public record, please.
Nelson Cannon, Nelson and Cannon, 6685 Poplar Avenue, Suite 200, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. I'm very excited to be back in front of this board with an amended outline plan. It was close to this time last year. We were here with an outline plan consisting of an office, hotel, restaurant, and retail uses for the development and rejuvenation of the Carrefour at the Kirby Woods Mall. I believe Mr. Ross did a pretty good job of touching on the numbers. Retail is staying about the same. Office is being reduced about 100,000. Hotel hospitality is being reduced by about 66 rooms or keys, adding an estimated 320 multifamily units. We feel the addition of this will meet some of the comments we got during last year's outline plan. With that, I'd like to bring up Doug with Kimley Horn to talk a little bit about the traffic part of the presentation.
Sir, if you could come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Douglas Sweat. I'm with Kimley Horn. It's 6750 Poplar Avenue, Suite 600, Memphis, Tennessee, 38138. On the screen before you is 3 sets of numbers. The one on the column on the far left is for the Western Gateway study. This is a study that Kimley Horn performed for the city of Germantown about 3 to 4 years ago. It evaluated the Poplar Avenue corridor as well as the Kirby Parkway corridor, considering growth in traffic along those corridors, as well as the redevelopment of the Carrefour property, the property to the west, and then the property on the other side of Kirby Parkway, south of Poplar. So it took into account the redevelopment of all those properties as well as some additional growth along the corridors. So for this property, the numbers you see in that left column are the development intensities for multifamily, retail, restaurant, office, hotel, and the total trips that were generated and used in that study. The middle column is a summary of the uses and trips as were identified in the 2018 application, which included no residential uses. So you can see there was an actual increase in total trips, which is the number at the very bottom of that column. So the total trips generated by that site under the 2018 plan would have been 11,614 trips per day. Now with the new plan, that's the column on the right, where we've added the residential in, we've reduced the office, slightly reduced the retail, and reduced the hotel. You can see the bottom number, it's actually a decrease in traffic generated by this development over the 2018 plan where it had no residential in it. It's a slight increase. It's about a 3.5% increase over what was included in the Western Gateway study. So the Western Gateway study took all of those trips generated in the growth on the road network and identified public improvements that needed to happen along this corridor to handle all those trips and traffic that was in that study. And so based on the slight increase from the Western Gateway to the 2019 outline plan, all of those recommendations would then hold and work for the traffic generated by this development.
Thank you. Sir, what was your last name again, please?
Sweat, S-W-E-T-T.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Mr. Cannon, do you have more of your presentation? Go ahead.
Some of the site-specific highlights of Care for at the Gateway that might not be as obvious but are still important to mention are increasing the pervious surface area, retaining 64% of the large caliper trees, improving pedestrian crossings. With our central location, Care for has one of the highest walk-bike scores in the city now, which will only be enhanced and is an objective of the 2030 plan. Multiple MATA transit stops. Shelby County's largest Class A office concentration, and serves both Memphis and Germantown neighborhoods and businesses. Having a phased approach will also allow us to better lease space, keep existing tenants' doors open, and have the flexibility to react to future market conditions. All these different uses complement each other and help drive activity for the other uses.